Thanks to all of my subscribers who have subscribed to my channel recently and all of my original subscribers. Thank you for being subscribers to my channel. Like I said, I'm going to be making videos on a little bit more. Uh, I'm going to start posting a little bit more. Maybe 2, 3 times a week. I'm probably going to stick with about 2 for right now. All right. So my notifications still not being sent out on my channel, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So do check my channel regularly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into this. Tartaria. I know a lot of you have heard about Tartaria. There is a lot of truth in it. I've mentioned a long time ago a name that I said Anya. Well, that is what is known as Atlantis, ancient Egypt, ancient land of Mu, or also known as Tartaria. Now, a lot of people have been speaking on it, so I guess I might as well go ahead and utilize my information to go ahead and explain to you specifically what Tartaria is to the indigenous of the Americas, being that you are of the children of Israel. Now, there's a lot of books that was written, uh, published by the original European, and they were translated from Spanish into English. One of the books is known as Dogs of the Conquest, the American Holocaust, and Destruction of the Indies. Those 3 books specifically, okay? In those books, they told you what they saw when they arrived here, okay? They told you that they arrived at these cities, that our people lived in palaces, castles, as they call it, all of the gold and silver that they call the land of El Dorado, all of these places was here. They have destroyed a good number of our structures, not just here in the Americas, but all over the world. Now, the White City, you can look this up. It was originally in Chicago, Illinois. Look up the White City, 1893. It's known as the Chicago's World's Fair. They had a lot of World's Fairs back then. The White City, all of Chicago, looked like that. Nashville, Tennessee, which is known as the Centennial World's Fair. The Parthenon that still sits at Centennial Park in Nashville, Tennessee. Look at the old images from the 1800s. It was a pyramid and a few other structures that look just like the Capitol buildings in Washington, D.C. Let's see. Look at all of the Capitol buildings of the United States. Look at all of them. You're going to see the exact same structures. New York City. You're going to, New York, a lot of the buildings, I'd say about 95 of the old buildings in New York City, those are ancient buildings. You may have heard that New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, all of these major cities were already here. They've been here for thousands of years. Well, that would indeed be true. Because you, my niiji, the indigenous, you have been here for thousands of years. They know you've been here for thousands of years. The structures are your structures. They didn't just steal your land, my niiji. They took over your ancient buildings. A lot of the buildings are machines, ancient machines. The Zeppelin that they destroyed, ancient technology. It was electric. It floated and was powered by electricity. It used to dock at what is now known as the Empire State Building. Look all of this up when it comes to Tartaria. Tartaria was all over the world. It told you in the Bible, the Bible, that the children of Israel were scattered to the four corners of the earth. That is why if you go to so-called Europe or so-called Asia or so-called Africa, you're going to see structures that are basically identical to the ancient structures here in the Americas. That's North and South America, the islands of the Americas, okay? This is Americas as a whole. This is the ancient world, as I mentioned in my last video. These lands, the Americas, were the first out of the primordial waters. Literally. Everything else came after. So you have to understand those buildings with like the White City. All of those buildings look like ancient Rome, ancient Greece. Well, as I mentioned before, where is Greece? Who are the ancient Greeks? Who are the ancient Egyptians? You are the descendants of them. It was here. It's always been here. That's the thing that they hide. They don't want you to know your ancient history, your true history that they stole and have hidden from you and want to tell you you come from Africa. No, you don't. The hybrid comes from Africa. They're the ones that come from it. That's their motherland. Because like I mentioned in one of my videos that I posted back August of 2020, Africa, so-called Africa, or the Eurasian Peninsula, or the Eurasian continent, whatever you want to call it, same landmass as one landmass, was the scientific petri dish. That is where the laboratory was. All of the beasts of the field, as I have mentioned before, the hybrid is the beast of the field. So you have to understand, you have been lying down with beasts, literally, and you didn't know it. They are of primate origins, ape and or monkey. And I'm going to mention this while I'm on this subject. The colored European. On my Instagram, I have oil paintings of what they call colored Europeans. Well, further research has shown, which I figured as much, I just needed a little bit more definitive information before I went ahead and confirmed what I already knew. The colored European, those oil paintings, are not of Europeans. They are, because when I looked at the images, I noticed how closely those images actually look a lot like our own people. And I wasn't 100% sure, but the research I did proved they use images of the original inhabitants that were of the children of Israel. So they utilized your own people's images and called them European. When the truth of the matter is, it was the African who came over here. Not the European, the African. The so-called African. The Iberians, what they're also known as. The African is the one that came over here. They're the ones that found you here. They're the ones that came over here because they were dying. It was the African. That is the great little hidden part of who came over here. The African has multiple languages. You have to understand. One of my subscribers pointed out to me this video of the Pope kissing these Africans' feet, male and women's feet. Well, it was about 13 of them in that video. You have to understand, the 13 families, their descendants are Africans. They are your enemy. But yet they portray, oh, the African struggle is so bad. They treat their own people like shit because they have to keep up the lie. They have to keep up the facade to make you believe that their plight is so bad. But think back to Black Panther, the movie. What were they telling you without telling you? Yes, they were utilizing your ancient civilization's technology. Yes. But they also showed you something else. That on the surface, so-called Africa looks like a third world country, a third world of existence. But behind the scenes, they had so-called Wakanda. But they didn't want the world to know, so they hid. They hid everything. They were trying to tell you. That's why they want you to believe that you're an African. When the truth is, the African is a melanated hybrid, as I mentioned in my video from just over 2 years ago. Okay? The hybrid, the 13 families, which are still under the 13 colonies today, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief, you're still under the 13 colonies today. But you have to comprehend this tiny little detail. Those Africans are the so-called European that came over here. Because where is Europe? It's a peninsula. It's connected to so-called Africa. One landmass, my dears. So when the African came over here, they found you. Your ancestors tried to help them because they felt sorry for them. That's the one mistake your ancestors made, unfortunately. But the truth is coming out. It makes more sense why the African in the 60s, when the older generation would try to go into a so-called white establishment and wouldn't be able to get service, but an African could come over in their African attire, speaking the African dialect language, and they would be like, oh, they can come in, they're African, they're not Negro. Come on now. That's why the African has a different status than you. When they come here, they are classified as white, which is a status, a classification. That's what you need to understand. The African is the so-called European. That's why when I mentioned in one of my videos, Islam was the first idolatry introduced to our people. Christianity came second. And if you go to so-called Africa, they're what? Predominantly Islam, are they not? Everything is right in front of you, my niiji. Everything. But going back to Tartaria, these ancient structures, and I'm going to use the thumbnail of the White City, which is ancient Chicago from 1893. Chicago World's Fair, 1893. It was known as the White City because all of the buildings were that pretty white pearl marble color. Beautiful. All of Chicago looked like that. Nashville, Tennessee, the World's Fair for San Francisco, New York City, all of them. It's known as the Louisiana Purchase, which is the Missouri World's Fair. All of these buildings are still here today. They've destroyed a good number of them, turned them into government buildings, Capitol buildings, federal buildings, post offices, especially in New York City. You have to know This plane is yours, my niiji. You are the ancient Tartarian. You are the descendants of Tartaria, Atlantis, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, whatever term they want to use for ancient Anya. The city of the gods, the land of the gods, okay? You are. When I said your original heavenly color was of a turquoise hue, depending if you are of the darker or lighter hue of turquoise, being you, the darker being blue, the lighter being green. The oxygen level is not as high as it once was, so you don't grow as large as you used to, as your ancestors used to. Look at what the movies they've come out with. Avatar. They told you something in that movie. Planet Pandora. The hybrid could not breathe in the pure oxygen on there because it was lethal to them. They're telling you oxygen, pure oxygen, is lethal to a hybrid. They're not carbon based. They're an engineered experiment. Okay, understand this, my dears. It's time to wake up. You are the ancient Tartar, the ancient Tartarian, the ancient Greek. You are the ancient people, the descendants of the ancient people. They just don't want you to know, but they know. They know exactly who and what you are. They always have. The whole thing is to keep you from realizing who you are, what you are, and how important the lands of the Americas is to you and the whole world. You are the landlords, my dears. Stop allowing an invading hybrid to tell you who and what you are, where you come from, your so-called history. Yet they utilize bits and pieces of your ancient history and give it to a hybrid. The so-called Asian history, the so-called Hindi history, those in so-called India, which is Hindustan, might I add. It's only been known as India since January 21st, 1950. But anyway, they have given them a history that doesn't belong to them. Now, the Dravidian that's in Hindustan, so-called India, they are your people. The Dravidian is. They stole their history and gave it to the mixed hybrid. And Thailand, thank you. Thailand is the island of the Americas. Malaysia is an island of the Americas. Japan is an island of the Americas, South America to be exact. New Zealand, an island of South America. The Philippines, islands of the Americas, South America. The indigenous are your people that they've tried to wipe out. Haiti, Dominican Republic, same landmass. Puerto Rico, all of the islands of the Americas. The Mongoloid, the so-called Asian, just recently got to the so-called Eastern or Southeastern Asian countries known as the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Taiwan, all of this. They were never there up until just about maybe 200 years ago. Just under 200 years ago to be exact. Know this. Everything that they told you was a lie. Wake up. It's time to wake up. I'm waking you up. Asa'r Redfeather is waking up the indigenous, the children of Israel, the real American Indian, the real ancient Greek, the real so-called ancient Egyptian, the real so-called ancient Atlantean, the ancient Tartarian, so-called Tartarian. You are the ancient mound builders. You started every civilization because it was one civilization, one, a connected network of one people until your ancestors decided they wanted to engineer monstrosities, including the hybrid. But anyway, dig on Tartaria. Look at all of the Capitol buildings of all of the world, but specifically America, and you're going to see they all look alike. Trust Most High, my niiji.